I want to start by saying, here's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to talk to you. So I don't know if you know, but I've taken a break from like the whole social audio world for like 6-8 weeks. This is my first show back, and I'm super excited. It's with you because to me, our friendship is like the entire point of social audio. Like one of the things that I think is so cool is that I walked into your onboarding room and y'all brought me up because nobody knew how to like unmute. And we developed a friendship from there. And I always say, like, to me, one of the things that's really incredible about social audio, like another definitive, I guess there are actually two definitive Clubhouse stories for me with you. One is the one where you talked about brachiation or brachiating in Brad Colwell for the next like 3 months. Every time you walked into a room, absolutely lost his mind.
That's so funny.
But the other thing that was really special was there was a time when we were listening to an interview in a room with someone talking about culture, and they started talking about the culture at Netflix based on something they'd read. And so I like DM'd Boye that he was leading the interview, that you were in the audience, and you came up and you and he engaged in a discussion because you were actually there. And like that to me is what's so cool about platforms like this, is that you can just have people in the room and pull them up, and like that's not real life where you like go to a conference and was talking about, and you just pull the person who was there up on stage. And so my question for you is that you were thinking about social networking like kind of before everyone else. So like, I'm really fascinated your take on where it started, where it is. Like, what's your take on all of this?
Well, I have to say, I'm surprised that so much good came out of really like Clubhouse when it came out. Can I say the word Clubhouse on here? You know,
Sure.
It's like, I don't know the rules. It's like swearing on network television. You can, but like it came out right at this moment in my life where I was, you know, and everybody, I suppose, at some level was just so isolated. And here's this new thing, and I've always been into these kinds of tools, right? So, kind of to your original point, when Facebook came out, and it was first sort of available to people who weren't at Harvard and EDU stuff. So it was maybe it's 2005. Netflix, in particular, I'd been connected with Netflix for a number of years at that point, but there was this moment that Reed Hastings looked at Facebook and said, "This is gonna change everything about, at least for him, the way people look at movies. You know, you're gonna get stuff from your friends. It's gonna be different with these tools." And I was brought in to explore what social networking and social media, or like that was my job at Netflix, to in the development of the product, which at the time was the website of Netflix. The question was always, what's the role of your friends, as opposed to what's the role of ratings and computer algorithmic recommendations. And so in 2005 and 2006, I joined anything that called itself a social media tool, from dating apps to what eventually was LinkedIn, you know, and everything. And I spent a lot of time and created stuff. There was a product called Ning that was sort of people making their own little social networks on specific topics. So like that was like my first professional introduction to this. And so I studied it. I studied how they work, how everyone would sort of bolted from MySpace and joined Facebook. And it was very much like this sort of beehive scene, right? Where people, they join, and it seems that you can't move them. It's an immovable, once you've got a sticky social network, it's really hard for someone to leave it because you're leaving people there. And that's the network effect, you know, among other things. So, you know, the question is, what could Netflix utilize a network effect to get people to stay on the service longer? Because we were always interested in retention. So anyway, those were the early days of that. And I got into it, and I just really was always on social networks, and I liked the way they connected people. But Clubhouse made it different. Like voice made it different. It was harder to create a false persona. You really get to know someone better when you're talking to them than when you're texting with them, you know? And so here we are in 2022, and I'm surprised that so many things that I'm involved with or think about or work I'm doing or people I'm talking to are people I met in the first 6 months on Clubhouse. You,
Right?
some other projects I'm working on, friends part like I had a party here in Santa Fe where friends from our Clubhouse group, we all met here. A bunch of us met here. So I really am impressed by what social audio does and the difference it is in connecting people, you know?
Yeah, it's super fascinating to me because I also, to your point, one point where I was stepping back and I was like, if you looked at my who I called and texted before Clubhouse and traveled to see and after, my life's completely different. And it's super interesting to me as well. I'm curious. First of all, there's so many things we talk about. I don't know how, but I'm gonna do my best not to be all over the place. But kind
Sure.
of like when they say like life imitates art, art imitates life. Like it's interesting to me too, and I'm curious too because obviously you're an accomplished photographer. I think art impacts how we see the world. It's interesting to me how technology is literally changing like our worldview, our interactions, how we think about connecting with others, who we're drawn to, like because it's not just like it's not online in real life. I mean, I feel like kind of the first thing that we're hitting on here is that like online and IRL, it's the same thing. It is your real life,
Mm-hmm.
and how cool is it that we've also moved from a space where, to your point, I think that maybe there was this opinion that online would be different. And maybe for some people it is. Maybe for the hyper polished influencer it is. Maybe for the troll who swears they're not that person in real life it is. Maybe for the person who really curates their life. But for people who want to jump in with 2 feet, I think more than ever now, and again, that's why I'm really curious with your perspective. I feel like online and IRL are more conjoined than they've ever been. And like, so do you see that evolution as well, or have you always seen the potential for that?
That's an interesting question. I was just talking about this with my brother a little bit. I mean, originally, I remember there's so many unintended consequences of what happened in the 80s, of building the internet and connecting people. And initially there's this vision of we'll all be connected. So you can imagine each person is a node and there's a line between them and you connect everybody up. And that's like the vision of the internet, right? That's how it starts. We're connecting people. What starts to happen is instead of it being me here and there's a highway to you, there's now a crossroads out there where you're connected to that person, I'm connected to this person, and then there's a junction in the virtual space. And we can now not just be using this as a road, but that becomes a place. You set up shop out there and we can gather out there. So that's that. I don't think anyone really thought that was going to happen. I think the
Mhm.
dream of the internet was that every human is connected, you know? Um, and as far, maybe I'm going off here a little bit in a different direction, but I've been just so bummed by so much about politics and communication and all this stuff. And really, as far as unintended consequences go, particularly from Netflix, I remember a time early in the internet and all the social stuff where the buzzword was the long tail. You'd hear about this. And if you were a filmmaker, for instance, and you made a film and it had a very small audience, whatever that niche was, the dream of the internet was that, and the long tail is that you could find your market. You could have a voice. And the stories we would talk about were you're a gay kid in some tiny town and feeling very isolated and alone. And suddenly with the internet, you find your people, you have a community and it
Mhm.
would help you. And it's such a positive thing. I loved the idea, particularly for filmmakers and for authors who felt like they were having trouble finding an economic model that would support their idiosyncratic voice. So
Mhm.
here's this really utopian idea about connecting everyone. But what you don't realize, a couple things. And one is that in the town where there's the one gay boy and he's we're so excited that he can find his community. There's also one crazy codger out there who just is wearing a
Wants to
tinfoil,
find their community.
and he finds his community, and those people are nutso, and now they are finding each other and creating political power and realizing there's lots of them. And that was messed up. Like, we didn't see that coming. No one who was doing this. We were thinking of all the great things about connecting people. And the other thing kind of related to that was, the dream of taking media in general, which is it was so huge and expensive and complicated, whether you're publishing a book or making a movie or doing any of that kind of stuff. And we would say, or Coppola would say, like, the studios are controlling what we see, and we want to take back our voice, and we're going to digitize it. And I want to see media like hot and cold running water running through places. So it's not like you have to pay the corporation to access these channels, but we can all do it. And again, that sounds great. And we made it digital. And I spent most of my career in what I would say is the democratization of these media tools. I wanted everybody to be able to edit audio and video and distribute that. And by digitizing it, it makes it very malleable and tiny, and we can put it on those pipes between people. But again, the unintended consequences, we took all this media and we took the organizations that vetted it because it was so expensive. They were going to try, you may not like it, but they were going to try to be careful and try to give us good content that they felt was correct, because they had a kind of an ethical responsibility as they man the portal. And now everyone's got access to it, and it's so malleable that we can put anything fake we want. We can say anything. We can now create false personas and fake stuff, and there's no way to really tell that's what's coming over the pipes. So on one hand, what a glorious utopia where we've connected every human being and they can all communicate. And now we've poisoned the well, because there's really no way to know if the stuff coming over the transom is real.
Right.
And humans behave like starlings in a birding murmuration, right? You don't analyze the data that comes through and hits you. You react. People react. That's what we do to survive. And now we've got this thing where humans react instantly to what we see, and we swerve and dive. And then we have a media thing informing us, which can be completely manipulated and made to say whatever we want. And I think it's a recipe for disaster, and I really don't know what to do about it. And one of my things at Adobe, my pet causes, which never took hold, was that, Adobe kind of invented a lot of the tools for manipulating media. Not invented, but really brought them to everybody. And I felt like Adobe, they're the bomb maker, and now they need to be, or the virus maker, and now they need to figure out how to undo the problem that they've created. They have some sort of ethical obligation to somehow let us know when things have been manipulated. But of course,
You mean are you talking about like Photoshop?
Everything. But yeah, any tool that has modified, but of course, everything is modified, even when it's not being made false, it's manipulated.
Right.
And there's just too many ways to capture, recapture, keep filtering stuff off. So metadata is not really useful, because you can tag this picture and say, this is a fake picture I made last summer. So I'm doing everything ethical I can do. I faked it and I put it out and I tell everyone. And in the first two shares, that metadata is stripped out, and this is just virally flying around and people are reacting to it. So that completely doesn't answer your question, but that's what I've been thinking about.
It does. Here's the thing that's interesting, and the point that I think is fair, is that what happens when you give people the tools to amplify their voice and to connect with like-minded people. And I really, because here's the thing, what you're hitting on is a lot of it's human nature. You know what I mean? That's one thing that I always notice when people say, how are there people like this out there on the internet? And you raise the point, which is the people were there. Now they're hyper connected and they have a megaphone. And what does that mean? And it is interesting to think, who's responsible, for lack of a better word? Who's responsible, right? Is it the parents? Is it the teachers? The tech companies? Is it the humans themselves? You know what I mean? And I just, it is interesting, and it also kind of goes back to the earlier discussion I feel like we were having a little bit, which is that it's not siloed. It's not just like tech people do tech things in tech ways. Literally, tech is in every single facet of our life right now, elevating it, amplifying it, impacting it, and those things reverberate back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and there's also the sort of issue of like genetic variability. Like it's good to have lots of ways to get things, and because you don't know what will be needed in the future. But we've now made everything digital. All of our stuff is in the computers, and it takes very little now. Just like for in biology, that if everybody's too homogeneous, it doesn't take much. One virus can take out everybody. I'm not making a political statement. I'm just saying that we need.
But I'm curious, like the person who went back and like watched Back to the Future and like noted what from that movie actually exists now.
I just watched that a minute ago.
Really?
A minute ago.
I would love to ask you though, what that you were working on 20 years ago, are you like, holy shit, this happened? And either you thought it would or you thought it wouldn't. I'm curious.
Well, I mean, kind of like I said, I really loved democratizing this stuff. I thought that, Lucas said in the 70s, long before any of this, that it will be amazing one day when making a movie, that any kid can make a movie. And it's easy as like pencil and paper. You just do it.
Yeah.
And that was a dream, and it came true. And then this.
Yeah.
Right. So it is true. And everybody knows. And when desktop publishing happened, there was the buzz was that there's going to be a lot of bad books. There's going to be a lot of stupid content. When there's two publishing companies, they try to make sure those are good. But when
it's like when 50 Shades of Grey made all that money, and everyone who was a writer was like, "This is the worst writing." And there was like blog on think piece on sentence structure and repeated vocabulary and like everything that made it.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
Made all the money.
Yeah, it's horrible, and it doesn't seem to matter. Right. And that's the other lesson in technology over the past decades, which is the presumption is that better things win. And what the problem is the word better, because like, yes, but what is the value? And the value of the earlier, the value of the earlier times was that like quality is the better. So high quality video, high quality audio, all that stuff. But no, VHS beat beta, MP3s beat lots of other audio formats. It's not about better. It's about more convenient. It might be about less expensive. It might be about a lot of things that we didn't realize. And so, I mean, that's why disruptions happen. Yeah. People put emphasis on the wrong attribute.
And anyway. It's interesting to me too, specifically, and then I want to welcome Rachel to the stage too, my friend Rachel Weintraub. She's a very accomplished and incredible producer. So I'm sure she's chomping at the bit on all these comments on media. But I'm also super interested, Rubin, because we're having a moment right now where everyone's talking about Web3. Everyone's like, everything around Web3 and Bitcoin and NFTs and, AR, VR, like all this, it's here. And that's why it's so interesting to me to have this conversation with you about when everyone was almost freaking out about Web2. Like, I'm just curious, does this feel like, what do they say, like deja vu all over again? That everyone's like, the internet has changed forever. Like, do you know what I mean?
Well, it's always going to change. And I think that the thing that motivates all the development are all those positive things that we will want it to do for us, and we can literally make it do. And nobody really stops to figure out what are the plausible consequences of that. And that just isn't a factor. It used to be you would really vet that stuff out before you do it.
Oh my God.
And now you just do it and you see what happens. You like let the cards fall where they may. I solved this problem. And, oh, look, it's a real Pandora's box that we've created. Oh well. Now we have to clean that up.
Yeah, absolutely. Rachel, what do you think on that? I feel like I heard you jumping in.
It's so funny. This is my first fireside. Good morning. Hi.
Welcome.
Good morning.
So, first fireside too. You both are brilliant friends of mine, and I'm glad for every single human who's here today.
when you texted me, or I was like, I'm in my pajamas. Let me get up, and now I'm like, where's the camera? What's
Oh, do
happening?
you want
But
to come on camera? I just saw your
no,
text.
no, I didn't know. I don't know if you have to. I'm literally learning. So to
You
your
can
points
pick.
that you're making,
You can
okay,
pick.
whatever you need.
So Ruben,
So,
I may be on camera because this is like his interview, but you can pick
okay,
audio or video. All the other
all
guests
right,
audio or video.
all right. I'll
I'm
just
only
do it the
gonna
way
break
I am
Ruben's
now.
arm today. Nobody else is.
All right, very cool. Okay, so to your point, what the point, Ruben, that you just said about the vetting. Absolutely. There's so many things that are happening that are freaking me out on many different levels. They're exciting on certain levels, but they're terrifying on others. I mean, I'm all for creativity. I'm all for free speech. I'm all for access. I love all those things. However, it is impacting the climate. It took me 7 years to like sell this last show. I came up in the daytime talk industry, which is dead because listen, everybody can have a show. So a lot of the advancements and to the end lead to the end of other things. And when certain people get certain tools in their hand that they're not prepared for, it's definitely, and as a mother, so I come at it like as a professional, as a mother, quality. Look, you could sell something now that I made on my iPhone, which that's kind of cool. But the playing field is so saturated. It's hard to find things to watch. It's hard to find things to consume that are hidden in their gems. And I think a lot of creators are just selling their stuff to whoever will take it now because everything is so accessible and everybody wants stuff. But that doesn't mean it gets the best audience. So I know I threw out a lot, but I've been listening to you guys, and I'm like, yes,
Well, no, and
yes,
you guys
yes.
have a lot of synergies because before Ruben was at Adobe and Netflix, he was at Lucasfilms, and he's a
Mm-hmm.
very accomplished photographer. And Rachel, oh my gosh, I love your Clubhouse bio. How many times is it? Like 19-time Emmy losing producer?
Sarah, it's only 10.
Sorry,
And it's 10 time losing. No, I'm proud, but
I love
it's
that.
daytime. It's for my work in daytime international news. I was a senior producer at CBS this morning, but and now I'm moving more toward digital. I've done a project with Meta, and I've done podcasts, and I'm trying to evolve my career because I have to say, as the technology evolves, if you don't evolve, you're like dead in the water. It's kind of
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know
I
my
actually
my
find I find
Good.
that a particular insidious problem of the tech also, which is
Mm,
not often discussed as much. And it feels like sour grapes. But the feeling is it used to be if you got good at something in your
yeah.
career, you were often a master of whatever the tools were of your career. And by the time you'd been doing it for 10 or 20 years, you're a fucking expert and you don't think about the tools and you can concentrate on other stuff. And by the time you're 50 and 60, you are like a mentor and can really help people
Yes.
and learn. But that doesn't happen now. Now, because so much is technology based, you have to, and now that it's subscription based in many cases, you have to constantly make an economic decision and a personal decision. Do I want to relearn this thing? Do I want to start again? I'm going to be a beginner at something I used to be expert at. For me personally, I edited movies and television and was,
Hmm.
arguably good at it. I liked it. It was certainly fun. And I loved that I could just sit on my computer and do it. But 20 years later, the tools have evolved to the point that, like, do I want to pay for the upgrade? I'm not using it as much anymore, and I'm not going to take a class to learn it. It's getting hard. So now I can't just edit the way I could 20 or 30 years ago so easily.
Oh, I
And it's
hear you.
ridiculous.
I
And it
really hear
sucks.
you. Yeah, it's weird.
And it
Aren't you
forces
like?
kids then no longer value their anyone who's sort of a mentor because what that mentor knows is so out of date now, as opposed to they've really matured into it, and which it further edges out people like us who've been doing this stuff for a while, where I have a lot
Well,
of
and that goes
wisdom.
back to your question about where's the quality control. Like you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
historically in fields, if you had that progression of almost like apprentice,
Mm-hmm.
craftsman, mentor, whatever the case may be, as you're saying, if we are shedding everyone with experience because they don't know TikTok, it is going to affect kind of all of those other learnings. I mean, I will say for me, and then I'm super excited that my friend Stephanie Jansen's on stage. You definitely want to be connected with her. She's extraordinary. As soon as her schedule opens up, she's actually going to be my co-host on all of these interviews. But I will say for me, interestingly, I'm so keenly aware of your pain point that in some ways is like my niche on social audio, is that when everyone is having conversations about Instagram, the fact that I have a stage with Rubin and Rachel Weintraub and Steph Jansen, like that to me, I'm like, hell freaking yeah. Like that's the whole point of social audio, is that I don't want, no disrespect, but I don't want to go in another Instagram hack room. You know what I mean? Like you all are here, you all have the knowledge. It's super valuable. And the fact that we can have these conversations is what I'm super, super passionate about. And with that said, Steph, I know you're driving. Are you able to unmic?
I'm no longer driving.
Yay!
Welcome all of these amazing people to Fireside. It is so exciting to see these incredible conversations that Sarah is bringing here, and I'm thrilled. I wanted to come back to something that you mentioned when we were talking about responsibility. I think this is a really important subject. By the way, on Fireside, you can say words like virus and you can say free speech, and it doesn't have to be a defensive thing, meaning I think this is going to touch on something important. You know, our country, founded in democracy, the great thing about social audio, visual audio, which Fireside is going to move in all these directions, is it's kind of the democratization of content creation, right? Everybody has these magnificent tools. Everybody has a voice. And ironically, just like democracy is messy, this is a reflection of how messy it is. Because we can no longer, once upon a time, a video was evidentiary. We could say, see, look at this video, it happened. Or see, and to your point, what if what we're seeing isn't really the truth? What if someone is saying, you didn't see what you actually saw? And I think to your point, this is the part that scares me too, right? Is that we have human beings on every side of every aisle saying, and I'm going to use this example, this was a peaceful protest, this was an insurrection, this was this. And the concern I have is that we are melding reality, where we're reaching this point now where, well, this is what I see, and we're both right. And it's like, no, not everybody's always right about the same thing.
Well,
go ahead.
What that reminds me is that there was this sense, and I've been writing about this a lot recently, there's a sense that, and I'll use photography, but it's also true in video and everything else, and audio, that a photograph, it used to be sort of objective reality to tell you what was going on, and now it's malleable. And the real disconnect is that was never true. A photograph is all, if there's a rally going on, and I'm a still photographer, without any digital technology, I can point my camera this way and present a feeling like it was crowded and people loved it, or I could point the camera this way and you'd feel like, oh my God, no one was there. And it's both are true, both happened, but because I'm highlighting one of these two things, that's the truth that I'm presenting. So there's no truth just by virtue of the medium. It's always been about what someone wants to communicate with you. If they feel like misleading you, whether you have digital technology or not, you can do it. I mean, of course, we've democratized faking it. We made it easier. We've made it easier to mess with that stuff. So that's,
It's interesting though. It's an interesting, and it's a fair point. It's an interesting and it's a fair point. And there are a few things that it brings to mind for me, because to your point, I do think it's kind of like if you were taking a photo of a situation, which photo are you taking, right? Are you angling the camera this way? Or are you angling it this way? Or it's like that whole thing, like as a parent, right? Where the child comes to you and is like, my sibling hit me, but they hit the other person first. And it's like, which photo are you taking? Which story are you taking? Do you capture the photo of the younger sibling hitting the older sibling, or the older sibling hitting the younger sibling and saying, this is actually the truth of what happened?
And both happened. So you can literally say these are both true.
Right. And so here's the thing. I do think that there are really interesting questions to dive into here. At some point, it would be a super fascinating conversation, specifically around the news. So like a real mentor in my early childhood life, one of our close family friends, actually I named my son for him, his middle name, Warren. My Uncle Warren, he was a chairman of the National Press Club, and I had the opportunity to interview him, and we were really close, and he took so much pride in being a newsman. Like that was like his ethical core, and being a newsman was something that was so important to him. And so that's a whole tangential discussion that I don't even know that we can get into today. Because as I said, there's so much that we can talk about, but it is interesting, whether it's in art or whether it's in news or whether it's in tech, the responsibility of the creator. And to your point, we are empowering all of these people without any mentorship, any essentially leadership training, or any discussion of their responsibility and we see it all the time with creators who are like, why are people expecting me to talk about what's going on in the world just because I have a platform?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, because you have a platform.
You guys, lastly, before I bounce, and I apologize for interrupting, I think I landed my plane on a grassy knoll instead of a tarmac. The point that I was getting to was when you made the comment about manipulating photography, manipulating video. Mm-hmm. And when we have these sort of deep fakes, et cetera, that moves into the ethics and technology that, by the way, I think we're going to wind up with, because we have people that are getting sexually harassed and there's some horrible things happening out of this. So I think you're going to start to see this necessity of because there's so many movements in research institutions and higher learning around ethics and technology, because this is it's an issue right now. So I mean, if you manipulate a photo or manipulate a video in a way that suggests another story, right, versus just someone took the camera angle this way and shot it this way, and someone did it this way.
But that's
I think you're going to start to see
it is slippery.
Slope, it's very slippery. And are you going to see something where they start to say, you're going to have a small watermark if you manipulate a photo and make it Tom Cruise instead of make it, George Johnson, or do you know what I'm saying?
Well, that's what I was
going
hoping.
To be interesting to
that's
see
what I was
happens.
hoping Adobe would do at some level. That they would, because they create the tools, they have an opportunity to do at least something in there. You can always fake. It's like breaking into. It's like cyber crime type stuff. You can always break in if you have enough time and enough horsepower. The question is, are you motivated to do it? And we could stop a lot of people from doing fakey things, that making it too easy or for us to know that they're doing it, and that will help in many ways. But the truth is, if someone wants to deceive you, they will make it so you don't know that they've done it.
Were you working on projects like that when you were at Adobe?
I was lobbying everybody that this was our company's ethical obligation to solve this. But it was sufficiently proven to me how unbelievably gnarly the problem was that they didn't think it could be done, and just kind of kicked the can down the road. And I don't think it was a failure of ethics in the organization. I just think that it's a really gnarly problem. It's too easy. If I take a picture, if I'm using Photoshop, it could watermark it that it's been manipulated or whatever they want to do. But I can always take a picture of my screen and it just filters out all that other stuff. Like you can't get away from all the ways people have to copy stuff. And related to that, as a photographer, to kind of move this in a different direction for a moment.
I told you I want to talk about all the things.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that that I make a single photographic print, a physical print of an image, and I never make another one. It only exists as a single physical print. And I feel like photographers have turned this into a mass production kind of process. I can make as many as I want. It's malleable and all that. So I feel like it's our obligation to limit it. The point being that you used to have to make prints for people to experience the image. And so there would be a lot of them, and then they would sell or whatever, and it became something the galleries would use to sell. But now that the internet exists, my photo, even though there's only one of them, one physical one, I don't care about the digital distribution of that image. I don't put value on that because it's so impossible to enforce those kinds of copyrights.
Literally cannot believe that I'm going to say this because I do not understand the NFT space at all, and it is not my jam at all. But to me, literally, what you are describing is what I understand to be the argument for NFTs. That guarantor. Everyone can copy your photograph. That's why your NFT is the photograph specifically. Like that's the whole, to my understanding, that's literally the premise behind NFTs. And I can't believe that sentence came out of my mouth.
I can't believe you, like somehow every conversation goes to the NFTs and blockchain.
I am not the NFT person at all.
No, I know. And nor am I. And you're right. It is this sort of certificate of authenticity that is missing. My favorite part of the NFT for artists is this idea that they participate in the secondary markets, and that when you're your art is sold, you're not at the like there's nothing worse than being a starting artist and you just sell your stuff to make money, and then 20 years later they're selling for millions of dollars and you get none of that. It forces you to have to keep making more, which is like, and then we criticize artists that they're just churning out stuff to kind of pander. It's because of the economic system at some level. I think if they could make enough money, if it was selling for $1 million, I don't know, maybe they'd make more, but I think that those attributes of NFTs are very interesting. If you have a baseball and you're like, this is a baseball, it's $1.50. This is a baseball, it looks exactly the same, but Hank Aaron hit this out of the park at the World Series. Like, I want to know, there is a difference. They're the same kind of object. They look the same, but the fact that that's the original or the one that experienced this matters to many people. And I think that NFTs are able to do that kind of thing, to flag this one as the one with the certificate of authenticity. So that is interesting. I don't know if that's enough to make NFTs work. It's definitely going to happen in some way, but I think like a lot of these technologies, we don't know yet how this is going to manifest, how
it's
kids will
interesting
use
to
it.
me too, honestly, because I kind of think about it like with books. So for example, like I was very hesitant to, if I loved a book, I wanted to hold it in my hands. I didn't want to listen to it. I didn't want, like, if it, or even if I had listened to it and if I loved it, I went and I bought it because I was like, I love this book. I want to hold it. And so what's interesting to me about NFTs is that, so for example, I don't know if, so my mom's an artist. Like if I was to spin this around the room, like I have her art all over my house. I'm really lucky. So I grew up with an appreciation for art because there were just these huge works of abstract art all over my house growing up. And one of the reasons why I like kind of like cringe and maybe don't know more about the NFT space is that the very idea of digital art, like the fact that like there's this like beautiful painting, and instead of it hanging on my wall and me looking at it every day, like I own it digitally. Like I don't, or like people are, or the JPEGs or the like, they're not beautiful to me. So like, and again, and I know that like it goes back to when people were like, oh, well, like Pollock is just splattering paint. So like, that's not beautiful. But I look at these JPEGs that people are buying and I'm like, this is not beautiful. Why are people spending money on this and calling it art?
Well, I think that will change. Like right now, there's this weird gold rush of people trying to make stuff. But I think at some level, we will have, I'm not saying I want to do this, but there will be screens and things in your home and you put something on it and it will be just as unique as a painting. If you got the one and you show it proudly in your house on this screen, it's something. I've seen some of those and I think that probably is how some of it will go. And the rest, I'm always surprised at virtual worlds when people build in virtual space. And this has been going on for decades, that they buy virtual goods. They want a nice house in the virtual space. It represents them as much as the real house, when people interact with you, these are like merit badges. You show them off. This represents me. And you can't show a million things. You show some things, and that defines you. So if I'm living in the virtual world on Clubhouse or whatever, I decorate with the things that I want to say something about me, and paying for something rare to show in that space, to hang in my virtual home, serves the same purpose for a lot of people as having art hanging in their house or buying books. Why do I keep the books that I've read? Am I really going to reread them? Or is it kind of like a personal statement about me, a little of this is who I am. This array of books has informed me. And if you just looked at the books on my wall, you'll know something about me. I'm proud of that. That's a use of books as opposed to just reading them. I mean, I love the tactile nature of books, but people decorate with things to express themselves. And I think you can do that online as well as in your home.
That's I definitely have some thoughts on that. Rachel or Steph, Rachel, what do you think about that?
I love, 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 love the context that was just put into, because that was very relatable. And then it made me think of all the things that have been knocked off over the years. My father was a designer. He was like a clothing designer. And when his stuff was sold at, Neiman Marcus, there was an edition of it in TJ Maxx in the bin for less money. When I look at women, listen, I live in the suburbs. If you met me, it would be obvious. I live in the suburbs, I work in the city. You see women's bags, and women are very proud when their bags are real. There's something to be said. Men with their and women with all of us with our sneakers now.
And
It's so
Rolexes and
interesting.
yeah.
It's interesting. Like, this is authentic. This is real. And how you're talking about virtually. And yes, do I keep old books, and do I keep pieces of pop art? I keep all of it. I love it. I think this conversation, has evolved to a place of, identification, and, how you identify, and what shows the world who you are. Because face it, there are so many platforms to be who you are that I think we're all getting sick of ourselves. But the stuff
By the way, are you taking us to see your bookshelf so that we can get to know you better? Because that would be freaking awesome.
I'm ready to look around. Let's go.
What it made me think of was that I have this art collection. Like, here you can kind of see there's this massive amount of art and photography, but I have a limited wall space like every human. So the decision of what I put out, you'd first think it's like, what do I love? And I love tons of it. So I need another filter on top of what do I love? And some of it is like, what do I want people to see that I have? What do I want to show people? Because like the books, it's going to say something about me. And I might look at what I put up. I love all these, but that makes me feel like I'm too blank, whatever that is. And so I tune it, right? I think we all tune all this stuff in our surroundings to articulate who we are, and that's social media.
There are so many threads I want to pull here. First of all, and I know it's terrible when every conversation on an app is about the app, but this is freaking cool to me that we can talk about what it means that you hang on the walls of your house and you're walking us around your house as an accomplished photographer. Like, that's to me. So I just have to take a moment to say that for everyone who's watching who doesn't quote unquote get fireside yet. The next thing that's really interesting to me, have you read The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo?
No, but I've heard of it.
I'm going to send it to you. I will say, for the first time in my life, because I was a book hoarder, this idea, which I believe it's based in Shinto philosophy, is not only that all objects have meaning, but kind of her take on it, that you can thank an object for the role that it has played in your life and release it, was the first time that I was able to have a lot less things in my home. And then the other thing that you said that I'm going to continue thinking about, honestly, after this show, is this idea that if someone built a virtual home, why shouldn't they spend money to decorate it in a way that is meaningful to their virtual life?
What they're putting out there, what they're projecting that they want to be.
I have to be honest with you. I'm struggling with that and really wrestling with it, because I really feel like I can feel into both arguments. Like, I can understand the person who feels limited in their day-to-day life and in the situation of their circumstances, and maybe they feel that they have an opportunity to be their true self in this virtual space and connect in this virtual way. And especially people, I don't know, once again, I'm an extremely strong person. I can't imagine if I had something that limited my way to physically interact in the real world, and then suddenly I had a space where I felt like I could interact in a way where I was being my full self. And so I don't want to disrespect that if people feel like they finally have a space to live in their authenticity.
That's the story of Avatar. That's an avatar, right?
On the flip side, there's also a piece of me that almost traditionalist upbringing. There's those traditional role models. Are you fucking kidding me? You know what I mean? You spent your money on things in the real world. And if you have so much money that you want to decorate your virtual whatever, fund a freaking charity and help someone else live in the real world. What are you doing decorating a virtual space?
Isn't that a slippery slope of, I have a car and I want to decorate the car because it goes out with me?
But it's not real. There's also a piece of me is are there going to be people who do things that are harmful to their in real life because they have their idealized virtual world. So they, drink themselves into a liver condition or whatever because online they're completely healthy and gorgeous and their home has digital art.
But we've just argued very convincingly that this virtual clubhouse and communication is more real, more effective than lots of things. I don't have any visitors in my home, but I have hundreds of visitors in my virtual home, and that becomes where I want to hang out. So to say that that's not real, because if we're saying the interaction is real, in fact, more authentic, then the decoration of it with things that represent me is as important, if not more important.
No, and that's why I said, I'm literally wrestling with it because I can really, truly, I can walk in each argument. And that's one of the things that I'm enjoying about this conversation. Rachel, I saw you come off mic, and then I also saw the real Skinny is on stage. I don't know what your name is, the real Skinny.
No, I'm literally figuring out how to do the chat, do the this, do the that, because you guys are making me think of so many things, and it's funny, but there's an element of personal privacy. You decorate the virtual stuff to show people what you want to, and then in your real world, you do you. Some people live the same way in every platform or facet of their life, but others don't, right?
But don't you decorate what's in your living room differently than what you put by your bed in your bedroom, where people don't go see that private space, so you keep sort of different stuff there?
Will you show us your nightstand?
No.
I know. I'm like, where are we going, Rubin? No,
but I'm saying that there's different layers of spheres of what I let people into, and there's the virtual one, there's my house one, but even in my house, there's the public spaces of the house and the more private spaces in the house. So I think that's a normal sort of thing that we would do, that I'm not going to show you everything. I don't know you that well, but I'll show you this, or I want you to think this I want you to understand this about me quickly, at a glance.
Well, that's actually where I think you hit the nail on the head, is that I am wondering if allowing people to create, and it's really honestly what I feel like we keep coming back to in this whole conversation, is allowing people to create their own virtual reality a beautiful thing that for the first time allows them to walk in their true authenticity? Or are they manipulating reality and being someone they're not? Which is what I feel like we've been talking about all along.
But I don't think you can really make that argument that they're manipulating reality, because I think that it's a slippery slope. You're always manipulating reality. To pretend that there's some place where there's the real is a little bit of a false hope, because at every level we want people to experience, from how we dress and if I do my hair, if I do my hair and go out, is that not showing my real thing because I normally wake up without any hair, or whatever it is?
Right.
I don't think you can make that argument very well, because ultimately we're always, just like I was saying in the photographs, they're always as Ed Weston said in the 30s, it's a willful distortion of fact. We accept that it is sort of a deception, and at the same time, it doesn't mean there's not truth in it. It just means we accept that it is also constructed at some level for us, a little bit or a lot.
I just want to say real quickly, and then I'll mute again. I am pretty no matter what world I'm in. All right. So
excellent.
Just so you guys know that.
That would be the
thank you.
True. That's the real.
Can we ask you your name? Because this is interesting too. You don't even have your name on your profile.
Well,
that's how real he is.
I am. The thing of it, the name is that's what everybody calls me, Skinny, and that's been my name since I was probably 12 years old.
And that probably actually skinny. Are you still skinny?
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. I'm 6'2" and I weigh about $170. So yeah, I'm tall and slim, and it was really interesting because I tried to get away from that nickname for a long time. I hated it for years. And when I had my last band, we showed up at kind of an open mic thing, and a buddy of mine was running the open mic, and he said, "Why don't your band get up here and do, a few songs?" I said, "Okay." And we had just formed, and we didn't even have a name yet. So he says, "Well, how do I introduce you guys? What do you call yourself?" And my lead guitarist at the time was pretty hammered by this point. And I walked over to him with the guy that was going to introduce us, and I said, "He wants to know what we should call ourselves." He said, "Skinny fucking Leonard, man." So Skinny Leonard stuck. And that just, no matter what we try to name ourselves, everybody, "Oh, that's Skinny Leonard." Well, then everybody started thinking my name was Skinny Leonard.
Honestly, that's an interesting thing about how also we try to construct ourselves, but sometimes it comes externally. People put us in a bucket, and that becomes our identity also. True, untrue, it's
very true. The thing is it got to the point I had to we were playing a lot of shows, and we started getting booked. Some people thought we were a Leonard Skinner cover band. So they would book us for the shows. And of course, I didn't think about that stuff. And we'd show up and do some stuff. And they're like, we thought you guys were a Leonard Skinner cover band, that kind of thing. And it finally got to the point when we went into the studio to release our first little album. There were some problems. And
I feel like we're going down a rabbit hole here.
No. It's just, this is how crazy it gets with being tagged with a name you can't get away from.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to literally go trademark my name, and I had to come up with a different spelling of my name. That's why it's SKYNNY. I had to literally trademark that. That's how crazy it was. Because if we'd have released an album called Skinny Leonard, just the skinny part in it would have caused us issues, like money issues.
You know what's amazing? The Real Skinny, and I'm grateful that you shared that. And again, as I said, you have to forgive me. I think whenever you're new to an app, it's like a little bit of a meta experience, not meta in the term of Facebook, but meta in the term of meta, which is that you are both having the conversation and you're thinking about the way that you're having the conversation. And so like Rubin, again, it's so interesting to me that you walked us through your home, and then like the thing about these apps that are so interesting is like you and I have spoken, I don't know, maybe 50 times over the past year, thanks to Clubhouse, let's say, including on the phone. And then I bring stuff and I'm like, I know her. She's my friend. I'm coming to your home. I brought you a plant or a bottle of wine and my friend's stuff. And then because we're on an audio app, Skinny just like came in off the street for the block party to your home. You know what I mean? Like that's like a very fascinating dropped my tripod too.
And I brought him into the inner sanctum of my home. Like that's a very private. I brought Skinny right into like the most private spaces. So
I know. Skinny, I'm gonna send you back to the audience just while we wrap the show. But I'm so grateful you were here.
Kind of as I'm riffing on this, like when this conversation started, I was sitting in the place where my computer setup is for doing conversations in my gallery or whatever that is. And during the conversation, realizing if it's really a phone app, I don't have to sit there. I can be anywhere in the house I want. I can go where the light is. I can go in another room. And like, it may have started with the best of intentions of setting up a tripod in there and making it really good. But like the power of the app is that I'm mobile and I should think more freely about that. Those things evolve, right? We're coming from the old technology where you have a setup, and now I need a setup. I'm mobile. Anyway, I don't know where that is.
No, you're exactly right. And again, I think, and again, I love the fact that all of these kind of themes throughout the conversation are coming full circle. It's the accessibility of it. It's and how seamlessly it integrates in your life. So like, this is not this dissimilar from you and I spending an hour on the phone together, just like being like, hey, I really want to talk shop with you about all these things. But it's on Fireside and it's simulcast to YouTube. And if I have my act together, it could also be simulcast to Facebook Live and LinkedIn and Twitch and like, can be turned into a podcast eventually and all of these things for distribution. And so to your point, the convenience, the intimacy of the conversations matched with the distribution. And again, it goes back to the discussion that we were having earlier that it's two sides of the same coin. So on the one hand, like I have had this really interesting journey on social audio where I've met like really fascinating people and I can be like, hey, can we take an hour and have a really interesting conversation? And I can pull those into a collection of conversations and I'm really excited about that. But like you're saying, if I wanted to spend an hour, twice a week doing something completely ridiculous, I could do that too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Word. It's like, what can I say?
I actually do have a final question for you before we wrap. Unless Steph, do you have anything you want to add before we wrap? I'm so excited you're here and you made it.
No, thank you. This has been a fascinating conversation and I'm just thrilled to see these incredible people joining us here on Fireside. So I'm really enjoying it. Thank you for being here.
Cool. Thanks.
Steph, I'm so excited you're here. I know how busy you are and it means so much to me. And it means so much to me that all of you are here, Jimmy and Tarek and Laura and everyone who popped in and Rachel who was here earlier. So my final question for you, Rubin, is that I actually love the fact that you have trouble writing a bio because you've done so many different things. You're like, I worked here, like I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I'm this, I'm that. And what's interesting for me is that in the Great Resignation, a lot of people, and like, yes, I put that in quotes because it's kind of bizarre to me and sad in some ways that so many people are only realizing for the first time that they should have some dominion over their own career path. But my question for you before we wrap is, for all of these people who that's a brand new idea, like a nonlinear career path is a brand new idea, what would you tell these newbies to the idea that you can, be a multi-hyphenate, and not in the like I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur way, but like in the legitimate way?
Well, God, that's a cool question. I'm not sure I can do justice in a minute. I think I've always felt that the power that you have at work, I mean, to go to work means to be helping someone solve some problems. You're going to help them solve something. And there's a couple ways to help them. And one is like domain expertise. Like, I am great at this. So if you need that hammer to hit that nail, I am the guy because I'm an expert at that. But there's lots of things where that kind of domain expertise also makes you too limited, right? Because that's how everybody solves the problem. And I've always felt that my power, if that's the right word, is that I'm a kind of a perpetual novice and that I move between industries, because what is common knowledge in the film industry is not common knowledge in the computer industry or not in the retail industry. And so you just shift over to this other thing. You bring all the stuff you were doing where you were just a regular marketing worker in retail, and now you get inserted into some tech company where they're engineers, and their domain expertises are different. And your opinions, while maybe they don't seem to apply, have great power when you move. That's how Darwin did his, he was moving from economic theories and it was applying them in biology, and it was novel. And those kind of ways of drawing and inferences and metaphor from other things. So my recommendation really is to see the power in changing jobs, changing industries, having a breadth of stuff, because you are more valuable to the things you're doing, the wider your experience base is. Also, of course, expertise is good, but breadth is good, and it's not always valued as much. So I've kind of surfed that other curve of, paying attention to where things are needed, I used to say moving chess pieces down the board, or moving checkers down the board. You just got to get everybody down the board. It's not, no one is the right one. I just need to keep moving them. And so in my career, I look at where opportunities are. When I'm running into a problem, sometimes you got to keep working it. Sometimes you just go to another piece and move that one down the board, because eventually this one will free up or you'll know more. So I don't know if that was coherent, but that's kind of how I think about it.
No, it was. And it's a really cool note to end on, because, one thing I can say, back when I was writing career advice, there'd be a lot of questions around, should you be a specialist or should you be a generalist? And what I kind of actually appreciate that you're saying is that I feel like you're saying be a specialist across several different fields. You don't have to be a specialist in one field or a generalist. You can be a specialist in several different things.
And a generalist plus time is a specialist in lots of things. Like, I look like a specialist in certain fields, but it's just because I'm old, and I've done them for a long time. But I moved from publishing to retail to tech to all these different things. And then in time, I guess you look like an expert in something, but you can't worry about that part of it. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I am so grateful that you joined me on this fireside for the first time ever for this conversation. I really, really enjoyed it today so much.
It's fun. I'm glad to be on your initial foray into a new one. I'm following people around in these various technologies. This is fun. And I think they're getting better. They're tuning a little bit. This one's new. And like I said, we're still working out the kinks for ourselves here, but I'm honored to be on your launching show. So that's cool.
It means a lot to me. I'm so grateful you were here. I'm so grateful Steph was here and everyone was here. And as this is on YouTube already, because I simulcast it there. Ooh. And we'll definitely share some clips out as well. And Rubin, tell people where they can find you and where they can follow you.
Well, I have my photography at byrubin.com. It's like BYRUBIN if you want to see that. My workshops and philosophies of photography are at neomodern.com. And other than that, I'm on LinkedIn and just hanging out. Come to Santa Fe. And I'm teaching an in-person workshop this summer at the Santa Fe Photographic Workshops if you're interested in my philosophical approach to photographies. So
that's awesome. My best friend is a photographer, so I'll have to send that to her for sure.
Send it to her. Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
all right.
thanks.
Well, thanks so much for joining today.